The gritty, kneecap-biting Detroit Lions really thought they owned the division, didn't they? And out west, the star-studded San Francisco 49ers, well, they thought they had an absolute monopoly on NFC supremacy. But you know how fast things move in this league. Everything changed in a matter of seconds. The entire landscape of the NFL, the strict hierarchy of the conference, the very foundation of how opposing offensive coordinators are going to have to game plan, all of it is shifting right beneath our feet as we speak. Welcome back to NFL Nexus. Today we are diving deep into a terrifying reality that is currently looming over the rest of the league. Let me be clear right up front. We aren't just looking at a pretty good roster on paper today. We are meticulously breaking down the anatomy of an impending absolute storm that is gathering right now in Wisconsin.
So you really have to ask yourself, what happens when an elite defense actually finds its final missing pieces? Just let that question hang in the air for a second. Think about it. Picture an opposing quarterback for a minute. He takes the snap, he hits the absolute final step of his drop back, and he looks downfield. Now, usually in the NFL, there's at least a sliver of daylight. A slight crease in the zone, a tiny mismatch to exploit somewhere. But instead, the walls are completely closing in. For years, we've all seen defensive units with glaring fatal holes, right? You'd see a dominant pass rush just completely undermined by a leaky, unreliable secondary. Or you'd see a shutdown corner stranded on a total island with absolutely zero pressure up front. But when you systematically eliminate the weaknesses, when a front office surgically, brutally addresses every single vulnerability on the depth chart, you kind of stop being just a defense. You literally become an ecosystem of absolute terror. As we stare down the barrel of the 2026 season for Green Bay, offensive coordinators around the league are waking up in cold sweats, just staring at the ceiling, realizing that the giant puzzle in Titletown is finally, terrifyingly complete.
And guys, the clock is officially ticking. Let's really dive into this timeline because it's absolutely crucial context. Right now, looking at July 7th, we are exactly 20 days out from a massive, pivotal moment. On July 27th, rookies officially report for the start of training camp. But you have to understand, this isn't just a random date on a calendar, it is essentially an activation sequence for a nightmare. Think about the granular, gritty details of those long July days. You've got the crack of the pads echoing across Ray-Nitschke Field. You've got those grueling, completely exhausting hours-long film sessions in darkened meeting rooms where every single communication check is refined down to the exact syllable. It's that blistering summer heat where defensive chemistry isn't just formed, it's forged in the fire. Every single day that ticks by brings us closer to September, and every single second of preparation in Green Bay right now is focused on one singular obsessive goal: sheer, unadulterated dominance. Opposing offenses have a very finite amount of time to somehow figure out how they are going to block, how they are going to scheme, and honestly, how they are simply going to survive what is being meticulously built during these long summer days.
Section 4. An elite safety duo recognized.
For a while there, the sheer brilliance of what was happening in the back end of the Packers secondary was something of a closely guarded secret. It was kind of just a whisper among the absolute film junkies grinding tape late at night. But honestly, the dam is broken. The national media has officially caught up to the tape, and they are finally validating what the most astute observers already knew. We need to establish that this isn't just a good pairing. It is a literal structural anomaly that fundamentally breaks offensive systems. Just look at how this is being framed right now at the absolute highest levels of sports journalism. Matt Verderam over at Sports Illustrated recently did this massive deep dive, breaking down the very best defensive backfields in the entire league. And his conclusion? Quote, McKinney and Williams in the upper echelon at number 3 overall. That is the number 3 duo in the entire National Football League. Now let's put that into perspective. In a league where the margin of error is basically microscopic, where a single misstep by a half second or one false step out of a backpedal results in a 70-yard touchdown going the other way, being ranked in the top 3 is practically mythical. It means you aren't out there just reacting to the offense. It means you are dictating the terms of engagement on every single snap of the football.
Section 6. McKinney, the coverage assassin.
Look, we throw around words like playmaker a lot in football media, maybe a little too much. But Xavier McKinney isn't just a playmaker. The guy is a literal apex predator patrolling the deep third of the field. When the Packers brought him in, they didn't just sign a free agent, they imported an entirely different standard of coverage execution. 8. Just look at that number. That number is absolutely staggering when you truly unpack what it means. Xavier McKinney didn't just have a good year in 2024. He finished 8th in the Defensive Player of the Year voting.
Do you realize how utterly flawless the microscopic details of your game have to be for a safety to command that kind of national respect? This is an award that is historically overwhelmingly dominated by edge rushers. We're talking about men who pile up 20 sacks and force highlight reel fumbles on the blind side. For a safety, a guy playing miles away from the line of scrimmage to get into the top 10 for DPOY, they have to be universally recognized by every coach and player as the absolute fulcrum of their unit. They have to play with a level of cerebral anticipation that makes them completely undeniable.
Let's really look at the sheer caliber of this weapon. Second-team All-Pro last year. He was an All-Pro in both of his seasons in Green Bay. The man is an absolute coverage assassin. 10 career interceptions, with a mind-boggling 8 interceptions coming in his first season with the Packers alone. 8 picks in 1 year? But here's the thing, it's not just about the raw numbers on a stat sheet, it's about the micro movements on the field that make those numbers happen. Think about a quarterback dropping back, under pressure, trying to thread a deep post route or fit the ball into a tight seam pattern down the middle of the field. McKinney is already there. He literally reads the route concepts from the receiver's hip displacement before the receiver even makes their break. It's like he knows the playbook better than the offense does. He baits the quarterback, purposely lagging a half step behind in his back pedal just to make the window look open, only to ignite with this terrifying closing speed the exact millisecond the ball leaves the quarterback's hand. He arrives at the catch point with such devastating timing, he essentially creates an invisible force field where the quarterback simply cannot throw without risking a catastrophic game-ending turnover.
Section 9. Williams, the rookie phenom. Now, if McKinney is the calculating assassin lurking quietly in the deep shadows, his running mate Evan Williams is the absolute blunt force trauma arriving violently at the line of scrimmage. 24. At just 24 years old, this 2024 fourth-round pick didn't just show up to camp and try to fit in quietly. No way. He immediately stepped right up and became a full-time, bone-crushing enforcer. Let's really put this into perspective for a second. In the National Football League, rookie defensive backs are supposed to struggle. It's basically a rite of passage. They are supposed to be hesitant, they take bad angles on tackles, they blow complex zone coverages, and they get ruthlessly, mercilessly targeted and exposed by veteran quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford. It is supposed to be a trial by fire. But Williams, he completely flipped the script. He just bypassed the entire learning curve, playing with the poised, calm anticipation of a 10-year veteran, but combining it with the reckless abandon of a heat-seeking missile.
The granular details of his impact are just bruising to even read. He racked up 100 total tackles. And let me be totally clear here. These weren't passive, cleanup tackles where he's dragging guys down from behind after they've already ripped off a 12-yard gain. We're talking about 100 brutal, tone-setting collisions in the open field that literally make running backs think twice before hitting the hole. He also added 3 interceptions, 4 tackles for loss, and 5 passes defensed. And he did all of this while being on the field for a staggering 86% of the defensive snaps. 86%. Think about the pure physical conditioning, the exhausting mental fortitude required for a rookie to play 86% of the time in a complex NFL defense. When a defensive coordinator trusts a young player to be the thumper on nearly every single down, it means they view him as the absolute heartbeat of the run defense. Imagine the psychological toll that takes on a slot receiver. They are coming off the line of scrimmage, assigned to run a shallow cross right over the middle. But before they even look for the football, they're actively checking for number 24, knowing full well that Williams is waiting in the zone, ready to separate the ball from the receiver with pure calculated aggression.
Section 12. The devastating combo.
And honestly, this chart brilliantly illustrates the immediate, staggering impact of combining these two absolute forces. Initially, they were paired up as your classic rookie-veteran combo, right? But they very quickly evolved into a singular, unified wall of resistance in 2025. It's basically the perfect synergy of fire and ice, raw physical instincts, and cerebral aggression. The raw data of this combination is simply suffocating. Together, they were an absolute force of nature, combining for a colossal 207 tackles, 15 passes defensed, and 5 interceptions during the regular season. 207 tackles between 2 safeties. That is insane production. But you really have to look at the geometry of the field they create together. Because McKinney is so unbelievably elite at locking down the deep third all by himself, it allows Williams to cheat down into the box, acting almost as a hybrid extra linebacker. Conversely, because Williams sets such a violent, physical edge underneath against the run in short passes, McKinney is completely free to roam the deep waters like a shark hunting for a turnover. They completely alter the math for the opposing offense. That means absolutely nothing was leaking out to the third level of the defense. If a running back found a crease at the line, the play died immediately. If a tight end caught a quick seam route, the play died immediately. They totally blanketed the back half of the field, entirely erasing the margin of error for opposing play callers.
Section 14. The Micah Parsons Factor.
Now, as if that back end wasn't terrifying enough on its own, there is a massive, massive development looming over this defense, an addition that fundamentally changes the physics and geometry of the entire field. So the absolute crucial point is this: the expected return of Micah Parsons from injury takes this defense to a terrifying, completely unmanageable new level. I really want you to imagine being an opposing quarterback in this exact scenario. You step back in the pocket, you go through your progressions, you look deep, and you see the top three tandem of McKinney and Williams completely, totally erasing your primary and secondary reads. The passing lanes are entirely shut down. So naturally, you hold the ball for a half second longer, hoping someone breaks open. But in the NFL, a half second is a literal lifetime. And in that half second, Micah Parsons is violently collapsing the edge, bringing devastating, game-wrecking pass-rushing pop right into your chest plate. It creates this inescapable, vicious loop of pressure and coverage. The offensive line is living an absolute nightmare. They have to aggressively slide their protections toward Parsons just to keep him from destroying the quarterback, which leaves linebackers isolated in coverage underneath. But the quarterback still has absolutely nowhere to throw the ball because McKinney and Williams are suffocating the receivers downfield. The elite coverage makes the quarterback hold the ball, which allows Parsons to get home. And the sheer, terrifying threat of Parsons forces the quarterback to rush the throw in a panic, putting the ball right into the waiting hands of McKinney and Williams. It is an inescapable, devastating schematic nightmare for the rest of the league.
Section 16. A historic defense brewing?
We really have to zoom out for a second here and look at the broader scale of what is actually happening in Green Bay. We aren't just talking about a team having a good defensive season. We are talking about the kind of unit that enters the pantheon of NFL history, the kind of defense that defines an entire era of football. The scale of this defensive unit could legitimately shift the balance of the entire NFL in 2026. When you impartially look at the cold, hard facts, combining a top 3 secondary with elite game-wrecking edge pressure from a generational talent of Parsons' caliber, you see a team perfectly, flawlessly positioned to make serious noise this fall. Analysts across the board are looking at the math, they are studying the tape, and they are drawing comparisons to the absolute ghosts of football past. They are looking at the suffocating, brutal nature of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, the punishing, fear-inducing secondary play of the Legion of Boom in Seattle, the relentless wave-after-wave edge pressure of the 2015 Denver Broncos. Green Bay is building a defense capable of entirely shutting down the modern, high-flying, pass-happy offenses that dominate today's league. The championship window for this team isn't just open, it has been shattered completely off its hinges.
Before we get to our final thought today, I want to take a quick second to say, if you are loving this deep dive analysis, you absolutely have to support NFL Nexus. Hit that subscribe button right now to join the smartest, most engaged football community on the internet. Make sure you like this explainer so the algorithm knows you want real, detailed, no-nonsense breakdowns. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think this defense is historically great? I read every single one of your comments. And look, if you really want to take it to the next level and get behind what we do here, become a channel member today to directly support the countless hours of intense film study and research that go into making these deep dive explainers possible for you guys.
So, is this the defense that finally brings a championship back to Titletown? Just visualize it for a moment with me. January football in Green Bay. The absolute frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. The air is so unbelievably cold you can literally see the breath rising from the face masks of the exhausted offensive linemen. When the weather turns freezing and the lights shine the absolute brightest in the postseason, you need a defense that can physically, mentally, and psychologically break the will of the opponent. With an elite, top-tier safety tandem locking down the frozen sky and devastating generational pressure violently collapsing the edge, Green Bay currently holds every single card. The pieces are all finally on the board. The 2026 season is rapidly, unstoppably approaching, and the rest of the league has absolutely nowhere left to hide.